guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. I have a feeling that the light is like quite bad in here right now, but unfortunately it is like hours before this is going to be posted, so we're just gonna go with it. It also may have nothing to do with the light and everything to do with the fact that I don't like have any makeup on, so we're just gonna go with what we've got. Sleep, still not really going well. The baby is definitely in bed with me now, so I'm gonna have to lie on my next survey where I say things like, always put the baby down in the crib alone on his back. Desperate times. He's teething now, so that's cool. Let's see. I think we're just gonna jump in. I don't know if I'm ever gonna film one of these and not sound like incredibly frantic, but yeah, this has been a particularly difficult time for reasons that I hope I will be able to tell you at some future time. You know, the way that a lot of things work in this in the business is that a lot of stuff happens before I can tell you what's happening, so that's fun. Essentially, I have a lot of work to do. I am trying to do something I've never done before, which is to write half of a book in 2 weeks. So my mom is here right now taking care of the baby while I do my best to just like bang out words in order to give myself a little bit more room to edit further down the line. I am working on the second Atlas 6 book. It is technically called the Atlas Paradox, but I don't like have approval from anyone to call it that. So I'm just calling it the second Atlas 6 book for now. I've seen a bunch of posts of people being like, and we don't know when the sequel is coming. You do know when the sequel is coming. It's coming next fall, which I know feels like a long time, but consider that it doesn't feel like a long time to someone whose baby isn't sleeping. Okay, so, all right. Okay, cool. I didn't write down the first half of this question at all, so that's fun. But it's about books. It was someone who was asking about which of my original works featured the same sort of like whip-fast banter. They say whip-fast banter. I definitely do like to write people sort of babbling at each other. This is kind of my sweet spot. The other day, I think I wrote like 2,000 words in less than an hour, which was pretty good. Like, I mean, well, it's pretty good in general, but it was also very good for me having been out of practice. But it was hard to feel like super proud of it because it was 2,000 words of two people just babbling at each other, which is like, I just love to do that. So it's good that you like that too. So my original works, I mean, the Atlas 6 definitely has a lot of ensemble banter. I don't know that I would call it banter because the stakes are so much higher. It really is more of a drama. Versus Masters of Death is definitely, that's a banter-centric book, but it's also a weird book. So if you're used to my writing, if you're used to my fan fictions, you're probably more likely to enjoy Masters of Death. If you've never tried my fan fiction before, have no idea what my style is, then you'll probably find it to be a lot of babbling. But yeah, that's something that I typically write all the time. The only thing I would say is not like those other works is Alone with You in the Ether, which is very like closed in, intimate. It's really only about 2 people. So if you like my story Lethal Combination, then you will probably like Alone with You in the Ether, but that's kind of a high bar. Any recommendations from other authors? The first 2 things that came to mind are White Teeth by Zadie Smith, which just has, I feel like White Teeth does what I'm trying to do most of the time. But Zadie Smith is like really, really smart, and she's definitely more literary with a capital L. Gideon the Ninth is also that. I would describe all of the dialogue in Gideon the Ninth as whip fast. I personally feel that Harold the Ninth takes such a stark, it just uses such a different narrative technique that I'm currently only recommending Gideon the Ninth for the banter, even though Tamsyn Muir does really great things with Harold the Ninth. I would say that Legendborn by Tracy Deonn does great things with the banter. If you like Hermione in general, then you're probably gonna really like one of the relationship dynamics that's in Legendborn. I mean, you'll probably like it in general. It's an excellent book, but specifically, Tracy Deonn she has read my Hermione, so it's something that you might find that appealing. I would also suggest, if you haven't, I mean, a lot of this stuff you've heard of probably, but I would suggest, the darker shade, the Shades of Magic Trilogy by V.E. Schwab has kind of aspects of things that I like to write. Pretty much any Maggie Stiefvater, but especially the Raven Cycle and the current trilogy that she's writing, the Dreamer trilogy. In terms of romance, Casey McQuiston does a really good job with that kind of banter, really very youthful feeling banter, very like sort of finger on the pulse pop culture wise. And then in historical romance, Sebastian really writes like the kind of banter that I think that I write as well. So yeah, those are all the things that came to mind. You've probably heard of a lot of those before, but if you haven't, then you're welcome. I love this question because I have such a disastrous answer to it. So if I'm going to traumatize you because you don't want to hear about what life is like after childbirth, then you can go ahead and skip this question. But I actually feel like, if you're a woman who thinks that like maybe you might use your uterus, this is something, I'm not going to try to scare you. It's just a thing that I think I would have wanted to hear. So the question is, do you have any thoughts on sex after childbirth? I'm currently 6 months pregnant. The asker is currently 6 months pregnant, and I've heard so many mixed things along with a couple of horror stories that I can't help but feel nervous about what's to come. And I think that's totally valid, but I also think that it doesn't have to be scary. I mean, this is the kind of thing where it just really depends on your relationship with your partner. I mean, basically, as with all things, sex is not going to feel good unless you have a partner who is patient, who is communicative, if they're, that you're going through that you're actually like taking your time with foreplay and lubrication. Also your doctor, if you're breastfeeding, your doctor will probably prescribe you an estrogen suppository, which is like not really a big deal and very common, that you'll just have to take for a very short period of time just to like, and they'll probably give it to you well in advance because you can't really have sex for a while. So it's not something you have to worry about right away. But as with all things, you want to be with someone who's going to listen to you if you need to take things slower, if you need to a little bit more foreplay in order to like ease in. This is the kind of thing that like, it's true all the time. Any sexual encounter, you want to have these same qualities, right? But I get, obviously it seems like it's going to be scary. I think it is scary, but the answer that I gave on Tumblr is that your first postpartum poop is about 800 times scarier than the first time you have sex. It's probably the most terrifying thing that you'll do. It's probably more terrifying than labor just because you've just been through labor and you already know what that feels like and possibly, / as I was, are still feeling not great. In 2013, when Prince George was born, I remember reading an article called like, sure, Kate Middleton is a duchess, but here's what's happening to her right now. And it was just like a list of what happens to you when you give birth. And it was just all sorts of things like, yes, she may be the Duchess of Cambridge, but she definitely is wearing mesh underwear. And like, she probably was worried about pooping on the table and it probably did happen and all this stuff. And I remembered this article for so long because I remember it being so funny that they put it in those terms. That's just like, yeah, this is just what happens to every woman. And this feeling of just utter terror. I was, my doctor gave me like stool softener and stuff and was basically like, good luck, I'll pray for you. Because as you might remember, I had a 3rd-degree perineal tear. And so I remember my mom was here and my godmother, and I was just sort of prowling around the house and they were like, what are you doing? And I was like, I have to go to the bathroom, but not badly enough to really combat the terror. And so there was definitely a while where I was just, yeah, I can't describe it as anything other than just like prowling around the house in fear. So you'll do that first and and it'll happen and it'll be fine. But it will be really, really scary. And then, by the time you get to having sex, at least you can prepare for that. At least that's something that you can like, you can warm up for that. So yeah, but definitely if it's something you're worried about, you can talk to your doctor and they will this is the kind of thing that your doctor will not want to talk to you in front of your partner about. Like they want to talk to you to make sure that you don't have any major concerns and stuff. So this is like one of those conversations that you'll probably want to have. And if you're really worried about it, then you want to have an extended conversation. But definitely, as long as you understand, you feel good about taking your time and you have, cleared, you're not worried about the baby waking up any second, that you feel like you've got some time to ease into it. For me, it did hurt. It actually hurt a little bit more. It was more like a surface pain, you know, because my like stitches had just recently healed. It took a long time for my stitches to heal. And so yeah, like I said, lots of foreplay. And then afterwards there was kind of like a dull ache. I took an ibuprofen and it was fine. And then I never had to take anything after that. But I will say as a positive that my experience with sex is that it actually does feel better. I don't really, it's almost like I'm more sensitive in a good way than I was before. So like, yeah, I'm just more responsive. Things are happening faster and I have more of them. But what has not rebounded yet is my actual like sex drive. That for me really went away while I was pregnant, which was very weird for me because I've always been the kind of, I just crush so easily, you know, and I like, was always in the mood. And then I got really pregnant. I got normal pregnant, but like it felt like really, I was just so enormous and didn't recognize my body. And it was a whole thing. And I just didn't feel desirable to myself, you know? So it was kind of a weird, everybody has their experience with this thing. Some people I hear get really horny during pregnancy. That wasn't me. And I definitely have not rebounded from that yet. I still sort of understand my body as kind of I think I described it as rather than feeling like a subject of desire, I feel more like an object of survival for my baby. You know, I'm his food source. I don't like, my boobs are basically they just pump out milk. That's all they do. They don't mean anything else to me. Like pretty much everyone, if you're in the room with me when the baby needs to eat, you're going to see my nipple. It's just going to happen. It means nothing to me. I've already breastfed on Zoom. It just like, it is what it is. And so I think that does sort of color my relationship with sex. That is just like my body right now. It's just not, we're not in that place. We're in the, let's keep this tiny little seedling alive kind of place. But I do feel very positive about the fact that like, you know, the intimacy part still is good / possibly better when I have time for it, which trying to get more than an hour, say, of certainty that the baby's not going to wake up, it's hard to come by. But yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Unless you and your partner have a history of maybe not communicating well, you might want to work on that now. And really sort of express to your partner that you have these reservations and that, you know, when this does happen, you want to have a lot of time for it, whatever the circumstances you might want to have. Say you might want maybe the baby to be in someone else's care so you're not worried about it. This is stuff you might not really be in the mood to think about yet, but I think you just want to create for yourself the safest environment, and you will not, I promise it won't be a horror story. Okay, and then last question. I've had so many versions of this question from so many people over the course of my life / I know for sure I've been this person. So Olivie, I need big sistering. I, immensely hopeless romantic, as are we all, till someone ruins it for us. Am falling deep for my online friends with benefits. Dude who said he likes me but has crazy commitment phobia / trust issues. Let's say we believe him. Let's say we believe that that's true and not an excuse. Let's be optimistic. The reason that I don't like friends to lovers as a trope is that when it's done in fiction, the purpose of fiction is to create an interesting narrative and to give you sort of, you know, obstacles to get through in order to facilitate this romance. But in real life, commitment phobia, I think that when something is real, when someone really wants to spend their time and energy on you / when they're worth you spending your time and energy on them, they make that quite clear. And they make decisions that reinforce your importance to them. This is one of those things that maybe you don't know it till you see it, what it's like to be a priority for someone. But let me read the rest of the question. So I'm super aware of all the red flags, but I feel like I'm addicted to anything that will keep him in my life, especially because of his personality on top of it. Opposite of girl bossing right now, which I think is really funny. I believe I said sometimes we're just girl ployees. It happens. I feel dumb, especially because this is the first sexual / kind of romantic relationship I've ever had. Okay, so I mean, that's why we're here. Because it's the first one, and you know, everything feels that's happening. Okay, I don't know. Everything's falling apart. Okay, so this is the first time this is happening to you. You're not expected to know the difference between a good relationship and a bad relationship yet. It's not one of those things that there's like a guide for. Like, sure, there's lots of listicles or whatever that's like, this is what it looks like when you're in a toxic relationship. These are red flags. But in the end, it's all subjective, right? And it's all about how you feel and what this person is making you feel. And because you don't have any comparison for that, maybe this is just something you do for a while. The thing is, you know this isn't a good place, or you wouldn't be coming to me with this sort of question. Like, you wouldn't be here if you didn't already know this person isn't right for you. So I'm not going to tell you this person isn't right for you. You'll figure that out on your own, and when you're ready to, like, disengage, you'll disengage. That's just how this goes. At some point, you'll hit what you can stand, and something will change, and it might take a while. It might take years. Definitely been in that position. I've watched it take my friends years to finally arrive at the conclusion that this person is not giving me the kind of effort that I'm giving them, or that I want, or that I deserve. I've seen it take decades, but it does happen at some point, and there's nothing I can do to hurry it along for you. But I do think that sometimes we get addicted to the pattern, because, you know, you want his attention, right? And so you'll do things to try to get it. And then when he gives it to you, which is not related to anything you're doing, it's only related to what he is in the mood for, just telling you that right now. It's not something you're making happen. It's just you're both in this pattern. It feels satisfying. It sort of feels the same way as, like, it's like how they say that conspiracy theories feel like you're solving something because your brain is going through the process of unpuzzling something, and it makes you feel smart, even though all you're doing is just following sort of illogical breadcrumbs. That's kind of what's happening here as well, that you're falling for the pattern, which probably gives you some kind of adrenaline rush. And he may have a very good personality. He probably does. You wouldn't have picked him for no reason. But I think that a lot of times it's this cycle that's really what's exciting, because it gives you, it's giving you validation. Whenever you do get the attention that you're trying to get, it feels like, aha, that feeling is so good that sometimes that's what you're infatuated with more so than the person. So what I always recommend is called the Big Sis Love List. I've described it before, but it's essentially you list your top 10 things that you cannot be without. Let me pull up my examples, because I feel like they're pretty good. They're pretty good examples, and I can never come up with them on the spot. So these are not your 10 ideal qualities. These are your 10 must-haves in a partner. And if the person that you're talking to or whatever, if they break even one of these 10, then you have to strike them from consideration. That doesn't mean that you necessarily stop talking to them or that you're not interested in them anymore, but that you at least switch, like a light switch goes off in your head that's like, this person is not the person. Sometimes just reorienting how you deal with a situation can sort of help you get through it. But these 10 things, I give the examples of returns my text messages, or initiates conversations that do not end with the expectations of sex. He must make you feel better about yourself and not worse. He must not belittle your hobbies or interests. He must not create situations where you blame yourself or have to figure out what you did wrong. This is that can sometimes be addictive, is the let me figure out what I did and not do it again, or let me try to do the right thing. And that pattern is what you get addicted to. He must not punish you with silence. This happens a lot. He must make you feel safe instead of making you feel like you're navigating an emotional minefield. He must bring you calm or joy, etc. And I also added, because this happens to be true a lot of times when I talk to young women, if it's a sexual relationship, does he actually take the time to make sure you finish? Usually, if it's someone who's commitment phobic, they also do not take the time to make sure you're satisfied in a sexual way or an emotional way. There is sort of an implied selfishness to that, because he knows he's wasting your time. And in this decision, like he's made this decision that is fine. And so usually if he's making one selfish decision, he might be making another selfish decision. And I'm using the he pronouns, but this is not exclusive to the men. This could happen with a partner of any gender, but it's just something to have in your mind. Be honest with yourself about what you actually want in a relationship. And sometimes you'll tell yourself that I would rather have this unsatisfying thing than nothing. And that's okay. You can forgive yourself for that little fragile human weakness. But I think it's good to be aware of that. And so that the next time you find yourself in this position, because you might, you recognize this is a pattern. This is not an individual. This is not that I keep attracting the same type of man, but that I keep finding myself in this position. And why? Is it because I prefer, what is this situation reinforcing for me about my understanding of love, basically? Which is pretty, that's pretty cerebral, but yeah. Okay, well, this is all I can do for now. You can hear my baby babbling outside. Let me see, do I want to say anything else about that? I haven't been able to read for the last week. I actually think I may not finish this month's book. This is the first time I think I may not finish this month's book in time for my usual 2-week prior discussion questions. So, but we'll see, maybe a miracle will happen. I don't know. Oh, and then another thing, I am taking over Tor's Instagram on October 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern for Tor After Dark. I will be doing a reading from the Atlas 6 and just talking about stuff. I think I'll be answering questions and just sort of chatting, and probably my baby will be there also. So anyway, October 27th. Let's hang out on Instagram, on Tor's Instagram. So yeah. Anyway, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.